Greetings and salutations, brave hearts, urbanites, and coach Mad Hatters. Welcome to the Star Dome. This will be, well, I was about to say this is going to be a quick one, as I've named it the 2020 Vision Master MUSEology Quickie. But the more and more I think about all that I have to share, it may not be as quick as I initially imagined. I'm going to take my time. Okay, I'm currently, presently, right now, stepping into the authentic promise to take my time and allow the moment to have its way with me so that we can, and when I say we, I mean me, myself, and I, so that we may transmute all that is dancing around in my head right now. And it will be in honor of my 2020 vision. There's a lot going on, and those who will come across this audio or this recording and have been rocking with me for a while know that I speak in terms of astrological awareness, in terms of divine trifectas, my story, my art, my acoustic alchemy. And not acoustic alchemy as if I am a musician or composer or songbird, but how I utilize song and music as a form of therapy, as I am cultivating and maturing from the inside out. And it is all in light of my relationship with self, my Temet Nos, my call to answering the question that the oracle posed to Neo when she pointed to the sign directly above the threshold and asked him if he knew what it meant. Now, the oracle goes on to tell Neo she cannot tell him he's the one. He has to know that for himself. But if in fact he is, he's good. And the determining factor is his belief. His belief is powerful enough to make him the one, just as well as his belief is powerful to make him not the one. It all depends on him. Neo, you are the one. Neo, you are the one. So we're going to take that as our premise. All of us, we are all AKA Neos. Divine feminine, divine masculine combined, which will be part of an ancient combination activated, if you will. So, in astrological terms, there is quite a bit that's going on in and around the unseen world in conjunction with the seen world these days. And yes, I am part of that crew, that unicornian crew, that draconian crew that believes that the meridians that separate dimensions are slowly but surely blurring the lines. They're becoming one blended entity. And only those with the sensitivities to seek out that which is hidden will even know that any of this is going down. So I say this as I have disclosed in many other recordings. If this isn't for you, it's not for you. I force nothing upon no one. But as I am discovering and walking these paths to better know myself, I am sharing. Why? Because I feel in my heart of hearts, as well as in conjunction with my life path number 7 as the seeker, that it is ultimately part of my existential value to share what it is that I am discovering, to depict certain components of my self study landscape. I am a self study landscaper inside the wild unknown. Mainstream trends and traditions love to call me a shadow worker, but it's so much innuendo and propaganda that have tainted and rotted the true essence, the true quintessentials of what that really means. As with everything else within this physical dimension, there are two sides. There's a light side, which is the masculine, there's a dark side, which is the feminine. Inside my newest of goddess studies, I am finding out that the term bipolar is actually an ancient depiction of the duality that dwells within the female embodiment. That there's actually a light side and a dark side. And that all dependent on the moon cycle will determine which force takes the driver's seat inside of that goddess human embodiment. And so let's unpack that. And let's start with the preface of the energies that I know of. Now, I will state that I am still within my novice cycles of astrology, as well as uh, psychological archaeology. But I am not new to reading the waves of energy in motion. I have been certified as an emotional intelligent coach since 2014. So I have tapped into, so graciously tapped into all sorts of curriculum surrounding the emotionally intelligent realms inside the workplace. And I am now graduating into the place that I like to call the pro personal realm. That's the realm where you are pro you. That's the sections of life where you determine, where you identify your neo archetypal characteristics, deeming yourself the one of your story, the one of your trajectory, of your own unique individuality. Also, if you've been rocking with me, you know that I am not timid by any means to say that I am on task to dismantle certain social conditions that have led my cultural denomination down a road of discontentment, disenchantment, and that all that's magical is for us to utilize. But we have been groomed to believe that such utilizations is rooted in something evil. So, being upon this task, I have been challenged to get down to the bottom of what is considered morality. Now, yes, the more popular polarity of morality is Nietzsche's, the master morality versus the slave morality. And it's quite intriguing. And I noticed that when I do an online search, Nietzsche's is the one that come up the most. Like you truly have to dig into your research to find anything that differs from that. So, me being the seeker that I am, figured I will simplify to its fundamentals. Let's get down to the bare bones of this, and then we will work the highlights as we see fit. Of course, because we are still inside the journey of the wild unknown, I pulled wild unknown tarot cards to give an overall aspect to this session. And as usual, it never ceases to amaze me how I had no intention of the cards being in association with a particular session until I'm right up on the session. I have taken the oath, and I think I've mentioned this in another session, that I am very serious about charging the cards with my aura. So whenever it pops up in my mind to just start shuffling them mindlessly, I will pick up the cards and I will shuffle them, as well as the corresponding guidebook. I write in the margins everything that pops up according to my journey with this particular deck. This is my first tarot deck, and it is awesomely, remarkably serving as what I like to call my celestial cell phone, my celestial direct connect. So the cards popped out while I was watching Water Baby's latest. Hold on, and I'm going to give you the exact title because this one, honey, let me tell you, this morning, listening to this one, yeah, it triggered tears. It triggered me into a tender transparency that was blessed with my tears. And let me just side note really quick to say, do not shun your tears. It's a powerful, powerful cleansing mechanism, as well as it seems to me that it is so magical that it removes conscious barriers, um, and allows leaps. And I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating, leaps into the elevation of awareness. And so, hang on just a second because I just want to make sure that before I continue to ramble on, that I give you the correct title of the latest and greatest by Water Baby Tarot. I do this every time, don't I? I swear. Bear with me, please. Let me get this for you. Okay, so it is December 13th, 2019 energy shift. Pay attention. You don't want to miss this opportunity. So it aired yesterday on the 13th, which was a very, very heavy day. And let me just unpack that for a minute before we really start unpacking. There's so much to unpack. Back lady. Okay. So, ushering in the new moon in Gemini. I have my Saturn in Gemini. So it has everything to do with the divine timing around my communication, my confidence around my communication, my study to show thyself approved to even be able to communicate. The energy was mild but potent. meaning that, and this is nothing new. It all depends on the full moon. Did I say new moon? My apologies if I did. It feels like I did. But around full moons, usually in the core of that energy, I don't sleep. So, and I say the core meaning the day before, the actual day, and the day after. Within that 3 day span, I can go a full 24 hours without sleep. So, and I never track that. I allow it to gain its presence, and I'm teaching myself to be sensitive enough to its awareness. But what's interesting is that I usually don't become aware of it until I am like already deep in it. One of the most telltale signs is that I am usually rhythmically, routinely in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Why? Because I like my 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m. time. Now, do I always hop right up out of bed at 5 a.m.? No. I'm learning to give myself this divine time of meditation, which I know I've mentioned before is like my uh, Council of Elrond meetings or my Ministry of Magic meetings. So my chakra centers, each I have assigned a what can I call them? Many will say invisible guides or muses, and they are my chakra center chiefs. And they all have names, they all have different characteristics. Some I have, or what feels like I made up myself. Others, they seem to come and introduce themselves to me. And then I have assigned them all depending on um, certain characteristics that I sense. And what I mean by that is, like, I have one that is called Pandora. And so, literally, from researching and through developing the storylines of Prometheus and Pandora and the whole mythological essence around that, it honestly popped into my head as if to greet me, where my response was naturally, "Hi, Pandora." Like, hi. And so she carries a, a power of temperance. Um, as I often say, the temperance card is truly my gift. It's my intrapersonal developmental gift. And anytime that that card shows up, regardless whether it's in a reading or in passing, it's a sure reminder that Pandora is with me and that I am to remember that hope resides. Like hope, regardless of how bad this shit may seem. Because remember, when she opened the chest, all the horrendous shit came out first. And it scared her. She shut the lid. And through her curiosity, gained the power to open it back up to find out that hope was there at the bottom of the totem pole. The last shall be first. And that in itself, out of all the other entities or all the other ailments or sorrows or traumatic essences that came out of that trunk, hope holds its own. Hope has the power to diminish, contour, or give some act right into the situation. So before I go any further, We're at the brink of Capricorn season. Jupiter is here. Saturn is here. Pluto is here. Venus is here. It feels like I'm missing another one. And that is right off the top of the list. Yeah. Um, and I think I mentioned earlier, with my Chiron being in Aries and my Pluto being in Libra, quite a bit is going on from my perspective. A lot of tender transparencies and very, very tender transmutations, uh, especially dealing with my inner visuals and my imaginary and my mastering to better understand me. So we're going to move into the 4 card layout that will tap into the overall energies for this MUSEology Quickie. And then I'm going to close out with a few passages from my 2020 Vision Bella book blend. And that is the 7 book bundle, if you will, that I have put together um, in light of my 2020 vision, my vision going into 2020. So let's get started. First card out is the 8 of Swords. Trapped, powerless. Surrounded by obstacles and threats on all sides, you find yourself the victim. You know you see no way out, no available choices. Your perceptions keep you from opening your wings and taking flight. Taking flight. What keeps you suspended here? Yourself or others. The 8 of Swords demands an answer. You cannot hang here much longer. You cannot hang in visions that does not allow you 2020 insight going into a brand new decade. I cannot allow myself to hang on to expectations that are no longer in regard to the evolution of my personal esteems. So, card number 2, the Daughter of Swords. Very interesting. The way that these cards dropped out. And mind you, as I've said earlier, I had no idea that they were going to be depicting the overall energy for this particular segment. So I'm going to read this. The Daughter of Swords. Oh, hold on, hang on, hang on. So the 8 of Swords inside the guidebook is page 118 and 119. And of course, if you get your Wild Unknown Tarot deck with the guidebook, you will already know what pages that these cards fall on or fall in or are hosted. I'm mainly given the page numbers really for our learning accommodation. So the Daughter of Swords is on page 124 and 125. Honest, insightful. The Daughter of Swords is a young woman whose honesty and insights take her far in life. People truly value her frankness. She learns from keen observation. It almost seems as though she never stops watching. Sometimes this becomes a burden for her, as she can't help noticing that. She can't help noticing this or that small detail that could have been done better. There's a potential for her to hold on to those experiences and become spiteful and judgmental. It moves me to contemplate the energies that surround this card because it's very, very true about my underbelly of being a seeker, having my life path number at 7. I am sifting through all kinds of content and context. And there was a time when my inability to release it and just let it be. The greatest advice that I was ever given when I began to hone into meditation as a therapeutic practice was for me not to judge anything that bubbled up, allow it to arrive and dissipate, ebb and flow without holding on to it with my judgment. And that if anything arrived that I did not personally have uh, a significant amount of clarity to be able to decipher, that I could hold it in queue in the sidelines of my mind and my heart, that corridor. I could hold it in queue, but I had to suspend the judgment that would keep it there, meaning that it had this autonomous power where it could step in and step out as it wanted to, as it willed itself. And that if more wanted to come along that would help me gain a bigger picture or grander understanding, understanding, overstanding, then so be it. But if not, I was not to hold on to it with my judgment. And so each time the Daughter of Swords has come up in a reading or in passing, and when I say in passing, that means that I am researching something that surrounds the evolution of my tarot scholarship, and I read about it, or it comes up. I have been challenged to allow it to serve as a reminder that so much will pass in and out of my head and my heart, and that the only thing that keeps it anchored is how I judge it. Um, and that it can come up today and mean one thing, and come up next week and mean something totally different. Why? Because my content and my context gathering mechanisms is on a rhythmic ebb and flow. And through my acquaintances and my circumstances and my experiences, that certain things mean certain indifferences at certain times. If I didn't just jumble all of that up, my apologies. And so it coming up as the second card within the overall energy of the great send off of my vision into 2020 um, tells me that expectations are good, but they can serve against me if I do not allow them to um, travel freely. Travel freely. I used to be stuck in my expectations. So much so that if the slightest hint of it arriving outside of what I expected it to be, I shunned it. I had it lost its credit, its validation in my book, as if I was the sole determiner of how things would show up, reveal itself, unfold, whatever have you. So, taking that notion into account, I am always pleased when this card shows up. So, card number 3 is the Ten of Pentacles. And like I say, I love it. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And so on site, the moment I see it, it lets me know that even in the most slightest indication that I am on the right track, that I have not um, allowed my ventures into the shadow realm, into the valley, into these sunken places, um, have not allowed myself to anchor there or set up shop or dwell there, just set up home. Um, that I know that I tap into these places so that I may have firsthand knowledge, and to soothe my Chiron and Aries. That's the other one that I wanted to say in conjunction with. Or did I already say it? Please forgive me if I'm repeating. Um, but my Chiron and Aries has been challenging me to endorse myself, my Sankofa / sacred energy life force, my celestial connection to being here, um, my playbook of the 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D, and beyond, to endorse my existential values into my infinity and beyond. And I know I'm a bit wordy, but please hang with me. It's the element that I'm in. And I really couldn't simplify it even if I wanted to. So the Ten of Pentacles on page 152 and 153. Fulfillment, abundance. The Ten of Pentacles signifies material and spiritual abundance in nearly every area of your life. The number 10 usually indicates the completion, and in this case, the journey was well worth it. So be generous, not only with your money, but also with your wisdom. Provide guidance to those who struggle. You will be rewarded tenfold. So when this card comes up, not only does it tell me that I have done right by my own travels into the discovery zone, it also reaffirms and confirms and reminds me that my travels um, into the wild unknown, inward, through my chakra centers, is no different than the archaeologists of ancient ruins or the findings of double goddess figurines or the most ancient tapestries that I am on journey to discover treasures that could be uh, efficiently and effectively shared. And that it truly isn't just about the material gains. Um, the more and more I learn about the Saturn and Pluto conjunctions and the interactions as it affects my Pluto in Libra and my communication ebbs and flows while I deal with my Saturn and Gemini, keeps me humbled, to say the least. Okay, to say the least, it keeps me humble. But it also, what can I say? It also requires me. My Saturn and Pluto conjunction requires me to tap into my value above and beyond my physical worth or shortcomings. And that has been the most hardest thing for me over the last 10 years, honestly. I'll even say 12 because check this out. Okay, so let me see, where did I write it? I wrote it. So there is this thing called the divine trifecta with regards to planetary alignment. So Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto have not been in Capricorn since 1518 AD. And I'm trying to figure out because I had taken so many notes that day. I want to say that I received that bit of information from hold on, Astralos, ASTROLIS.com. And so Saturn and Pluto have been doing this dance since December 18, 2007. Back and forth, mind you. Let me say that. Um, in and out between retrogrades and other planetary infusions and things like that. And so, let me see. I have this piece that I wrote a few days ago that I had in mind to share. And when you know it, I didn't bookmark it or highlight it or anything. Isn't that something? Jiminy Cricket. Okay, hang on, because I do want to read it to you. Um, but I really don't want it to be so much dead space with you hearing me flip through my journal. Okay, so let's see here. This is the last conjunction between Venus and Saturn in Capricorn for at least 30 years. I just want to read that real quick. Um, but I honestly want to tap into what I may mention. Um, yes, okay, so, excuse me. Pluto in Capricorn is the timeline that incubate major life transformations with leagues of reinvention, serious pondering upon one's true meaning for existence, and the best courses of action to support themselves as well as their loved ones. There's a heavily concentrated energy that accompanies the magically peculiar time span, January 2008 to January 2024. The prudent and patient virtues sets the tone for slow and steady wins the race, and the constant opportunities to transmute chaos into something purposeful. At the brink of this timeline, I had absolutely no idea I was invisibly hovering. I had no idea. Okay, hold on. Let me start now. At the brink of this timeline, I had absolutely no idea what was hovering, what was invisibly hovering over my theme of lifestyle enchantments and challenges. I stumbled often and cried silently to avoid the possible emotional avalanches, which was totally useless because the avalanches came nonetheless. All sorts of pitfalls and setbacks and mistakes ensued, ultimately grooming me to stand in front of the firing squad without flinching. As Jupiter spends his last weekend in a nostalgic and reflective part of my chart, I have reached the final days of a 12-year Jupiter cycle of expansion that began in 2007. making it important to spend time reflecting. Yet ahead of Jupiter's return to Capricorn early next week, and I wrote this actually on Thanksgiving Day, so I'm reading this in hindsight. Return to Capricorn early next week. Venus is already encouraging me to take a look into the future. All will not make the public domain through the newspapers, and why should it? And that was just something that I wrote in the sidebar because we now live in a world where we are figuring that either we ourselves need to share everything, or we as the consumer of content, that the contributor needs to share everything. And there are some things that need to remain within the private sanctity of one's life. And I think that it's worth pondering, especially as the embracing of this Ten of Pentacle energy ensues. And so I wrote here, for this lifetime, the past 12 years has connected dots, completed aligning cycles, and completed aligning cycles, and learning to dedicate individual time and attention to hearing and considering what I think as well as how I feel. The balance of this is fundamental for the foundation upon which I will build my future. And so, yeah, even though the Ten of Pentacles card comes up, it still arrives inside of a reality of mine that has yet to find its way into a steady income generational cycle. My awe at how all has played out over the past 12 years, and how even though I have not been in a major stump of poverty, my personal power to generate income has seriously, like it was a specialty that it was on the back burner. Nothing that connected to stable income entered my space no matter what I did. It was nerving. It was heartbreaking. It was game changing. It was it was incredible. And it was so incredible, so much so. I like to say that, so much so because I had stumbled from simultaneously holding a full-time position in nonprofit marketing and evenings and weekends inside the salon on a 20-year stretch of being a licensed cosmetologist, that to enter into a realm where no matter what I did, I could not generate steady income was baffling. It was baffling. It had me shaken to my core um, at how I viewed myself, how I deemed myself worthy, what it is that I had to offer others, or not even had to offer others, but how I view myself in worthiness or in conjunction to what it is I could offer others. And it forced me to become creative with how I esteemed myself, how I viewed myself, what it is that I believed surrounding myself. And so I say all the time, this knowledge and where I am headed with regards to my self-study landscaping, and my intuitive intelligences. That wasn't the plan. That wasn't a plan. Now, to become a writer, become a published writer, and to be able to coach through uh, with certain intelligence, yes, that was part of the plan. So it started out me saying, I am going to buckle down and sharpen my skills, learn the magic of my pen so that I can contour narrative. Yes, I am a storyteller. We shall coach by story. That's what we shall do. And I'm gonna tell you something else. I had only figured about 24 months tops. Like, and I never thought that it would take more than 3 years to recalibrate and shoot on back into a more um, spruced up trajectory into this new realm. Like, I just did not see the career turnaround time being more than 2 years, three at best, never 10, 12. Nah, no. So I struggled with tons and tons of bouts of depression. I had to find out who I was because I was my worst critic ever. And I came across something a few years ago, and I'm just going to paraphrase because I don't remember word for word, let alone the source by which I was learning from at the time. But it more so told me that Saturn comes in to teach hard lessons, and that if you can deal with, buckle down, hone into, anchor in to the hard lessons, deal with the shadow side of it, deal with all of the fear, the aching, the heartache, get the achy breaky, deal with all of that, judge it if you need to, become completely hostile and hate it if you like. But as you are coming up out of it, the goal is to leave all of that in the shadow realm, all of that in the valley. Like, don't run from it. Don't act like it doesn't exist. You can curse it even if you want to. Like, there are no rules when you're inside the shadow realm. There are no rules inside the wild unknown. But the key is it has to be all off you by the time you resurrect. Inside your transitioning, your rebirthing stations, you must be washed of it all. So then it says, you can hate Saturn when you need to hate him or her. I'm still in habit. I'm still a creature of habit. But at some point, if you don't find yourself in love with what those hard lessons taught you, then you actually didn't learn anything at all. So I start stepping into the challenge where, and I think I've said this in another recording, that if I criticize within the same conversation, I have to be able to contribute some type of compliment. I have to balance out my criticisms and my compliments. That's the only way I'm going to be able to criticize to the length that I do. I have to find the good and the bad within the same conversation. If I don't, I can't leave the conversation. The marathon will continue if I can only bring forth uh, one side of it because it's lopsided. And I say all the time, tell me what circle is able to do its full roundabout, missing a half. No, it's just going to toggle back and forth. It's going to weeble wobble. It's going to weeble wobble. That's what it's going to do. Wobble, baby. That's what it's going to do. Only when we put its complete opposite in conjunction with it will you roll up out of there. So, as much as I love to see the Ten of Pentacles, I have to make sure that I stay in the right heart and mind frame to utilize it at its best, or utilize the energy that comes forth with it to my best, I should say. And so the last card out is the Nine of Cups. And I have to giggle at this card when it shows up because here lately it's been popping up. And when I say popping up, I'm talking about I am shuffling and it just flies out like boop. Like here I am. Celebrate my presence. So that's what we're going to do. Nine of Cups, bliss, harmony on page 90 and 91 of the guidebook. At last, the card of wishes come true. When the Nine of Cups appears, worries and fears will be cast away. A new phase of peace and harmony awaits. The world seems to be granting your every wish. Good health, happiness, and even material gains are headed your way. Enjoy. So, to take a bird's eye view at the cards, um, and the photo of this particular layout is the image right before this lecture begins. Um, so, of course, pause it, go back, ponder it. If you have your own Wild Unknown Tarot deck, pull out these four cards and arrange them in front of you the way that they are situated inside the photo, and just meditate. Um, Go inside the guidebook and write inside the margins or fill the white space up with whatever bubbles up as you are contemplating, and see what overall message comes to you through your contemplations of viewing the cards and what they mean to you precisely. Because remember, I am interpreting how it's coming through for me and what it means to me. And so my sharing should only serve as your intellectual seed. That's it. I will never, ever, ever show up in any recording telling you that this is absolutely the way that you should see it. Ever. But it feels good to ponder it, to say that there is light and that there is possibility, and that just by knowing that it is, just by knowing, Neo, you are the one, and having the intricate experience of knowing that these cards show up to give us an indication of the energy that permeates. And this is just one combination of the incredible qualities of energies that are now ensuing this round. So before we get into my Bella Book blend for the enhancement of my 2020 vision, I'm gonna share something with you. So this morning, right at the brink of daylight, I purposely snuggled in. Um, okay, so let me give you just a little. Let me give you just a little bit of the setting here. Okay, Washington D.C. Um, within 14 days before Christmas. It's a what is it called? Is it a catch? It's a I'm just gonna say it's a catch bag. It's a toss up of what the weather could be. Um, it usually do not get tremendously cold in this area until after the new year, but it truly all depends. Um, but for the most part, the air will have a chill to it, but it won't be too cold. So for the last couple of days, it's been um, lightly dusting with snow, misty rain, not that heavy, like torrential rain, just misty. Uh, oh, that's something. Something just not ran across, but just brisked my leg. Threw me off for a minute. It's like, all right, Celestials, come on now. Okay. I know you here because I invited you here, but don't do that. You're going to freak me out. I'm in the middle of sentence here. Okay. So this morning, I early in the morning, I raised my window. I situate the blinds so that even though I am laying in my bed, I can have a full view of the outside, the outdoors. And the backyard is full of trees, and but of course the trees have no leaves, but still it gives a nice scenery to um, my process of meditation if I am in and out, where I will like peek through the window while the room is still semi dark. And it's really a magical time for me. So this morning, what makes it so special is that it was completely foggy out. The only thing that you could see was the more larger branches of the trees and the trunk. The last time that I have awakened to such density and fog was in May when I was in Massanutten celebrating my oldest sister's birthday. Now, we have a thing that has lasted in our family for a good long while. And my grandma, my nana, my dad's mom, she was an advocate of feeding the birds because they always brought song to the landscape that surrounded any dwelling, whether she was in an apartment or in a home with a backyard and front yard. And so my dad has taken up that honor, and he doesn't play around. Like my dad has bird feeders, and he goes and he rakes the bird poop and uh, recycles it back into the soil. And he's a Taurus son, so he has this green thumb earthy honorarium thing that is just so adorable. So he keeps the birds pleased to the point where you can tell um, that they take preference to this yard. So even inside of the shrubberies, they are packed full of birds even during this time of year. So the birds were lightly chirping, and the only thing that you could see was this smoky, misty, and the air was not cold, and it wasn't even really truly chilled. It was just misty. It was magical. And the only thing I could hear, no cars, and we live in the city. I mean, more on we live more between the city and suburbia, so we're right on the cusp. But still, any given day, you can hear the sirens and you hear cars and um, whatever else is going on up at the top of the where the main throughway is. Nothing. It was so peaceful, and it wasn't even all the birds chirping. It was just a few of them that just gave just the magic to the ambiance. And so between the birds and my nana always saying that when it's densely fogged like that, that means that the celestials are walking the round, and that just through thought alone, you can have an intimate conversation with them as if they were sitting there with you. So when I truly came into the awareness of how foggy it was, I snuggled in to my comfy position in my bed, and I went into, and I'm just going to say this, trance for the lack of a better term at the moment. And held on to the presence that felt Saturn, that felt Venus, that felt Pluto, felt Jupiter, as well as my conversations with Chiron around my wounded healer evolutions, and how Pluto is prompting me and stretching me to see beyond the physical and all that matters in those realms, and just try my best to bring my wishful narrative around all of that. And like I said, or like I think I've said, I had no idea that these cards were going to lay out like this. So it brings affirmation to my new practices, especially around my meditation as inner therapy, as inner healing. I instantly, after I came out of that silent conversation, I text my children. Um, okay, let me real quick. So I have this thing called My Crew, My Crew. And what it is my three children, one of my nephews, and my baby sister. And so we're in a group chat. And so I immediately text them just to let them know, like in the sacred text, like it's honored that when it's densely fogged outside, that the celestials walk amongst us. So speak to them, say hey to them, give your thanks to them. If it's anything that you're challenged with or have questions or whatever have you, pose it while we are in the midst of this dense fog, and see what type of questions or revelations are returned to you. And so that made me feel good as well, because it was almost like Nana showed up at the house and I'm calling all the kids to come and have a conversation with her. And so if in fact they followed through with that, then that means that they were able to have their time with her as well. And so that was just enormous to me in my life. And I think it has a lot to do with me taking advantage of my Ten of Pentacles energy and my Nine of Cups energy. Because it isn't honestly, and let me say this, because when I first started partaking into my scholarship around tarot, and really truly stepping into my language immersion, when I first began to see the Ten of Pentacles, it always related to me about money. And it almost had me begin to discredit, because it's like, okay, so for the last month, this card has been coming up around me and I ain't seen no money. Like, what is going on around here? Like, nobody's calling me, nobody's emailing me, like, nobody's getting at me. What is this? What is this Ten of Pentacles about for real? But even through the patient, the slow and steady evolution of my scholarship, I am learning, especially with my dance, my Saturn and Pluto dance that's going on. I am to find my value beyond the physical. I am to really truly find the the Ten of Pentacles in its energetic value. In its yeah. Yeah, okay. I digress. Okay, so let's have at it. My 2020 vision, Bella book blend, which I have to say, the list, the complete list, as well as the page numbers for which I will read from, is listed on the blog, which I hope those whom are hanging with me on a regular basis go visit often, please. I take great pride and joy, and which the blog, I will say truly, is my living example to my last 12 years. And I like to say that it's been 12 years a slave, but I don't mean it in any type of sarcastic type of shade. Like, honestly, I have been enslaved to this dream come true. Like, I've been enslaved to bringing forth that which has dwelled within the corridors of my head and my heart. Man, you're just slaving over this thing to manifest this thing. So, the blog is honestly my 12-year labor of love. Um, there is authentic expression, true, creative narrative, uh, links to quite a bit of things that I was discovering and bumping into. And so, yeah, I put my heart into the blog. So please go visit on behalf of the story.blogspot.com, which is referenced in every single video upload I have on this channel. So it ought not be hard to find. And so, yeah, I invite you to go and discover yourself there. I think you might be delighted with what you find. So, on to the books. Let's get on to the good stuff. You will often catch me saying that because of social conditioning, I understand how we like to vet and validate folks according to their credit score. Me, not so much. I want to see what's on your bookshelf. I do. I want to see what's on your bookshelf. I have had many giggle at me because in the moments when I was dating, and I'll just say for the record, it's way too complicated. It's such an alienating oxymoron to my soul the way that um, dating trends are unfolding these days. But when it was a thing, and I do, and let me just preface by saying, I love flowers and candy and gifts and bags and shoes and all of that kind of stuff. I really do. But to show up at the door with a brand new book that has been revealed in conversation that I really want, but I don't have, honey, honey. Okay, so let's outline the books and then we will tap into them. So, book number 1 is Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing by Dr. Joy DeGruy. And copyright 2005. Book number 2, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Color Blindness by Michelle Alexander, copyright 2012. Book number 3, Becoming by Michelle Obama, copyright 2018. Book number 4, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, copyright 1903. Book number 5, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, the 25th anniversary edition, copyright 2013. Book number 6, Grit to Great, How Perseverance, Passion, and Pluck take you from ordinary to extraordinary by Linda Kaplan Thyler and Robin Koval, copyright 2015. Book number 7, Becoming the Obvious Choice, A Guide to Your Next Opportunity by Brian Dodge and David Cottrell. Copyright 2001. Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, page 184. Building self-esteem. Beliefs are powerful. Remember our discussion in chapter 4? They strongly influence how we think, feel, and behave. And their influence can be negative or positive. If a person has negative beliefs about their value and skills, they will often self-sabotage their efforts or cease trying at all. If a person has a positive belief about their ability and worth, they are more likely to achieve the results they are after. When we believe ourselves to be unworthy or incapable, these beliefs have harsh, I'm sorry. When we believe ourselves to be unworthy or incapable, these beliefs have little basis in fact, yet they can still be powerful influences. What we need most in these instances is evidence to the contrary. If we can see that we are, in fact, valuable, that we are, in fact, able, we will change our beliefs about ourselves accordingly. So far, we have talked about vacant esteem and some of the ways in which it manifests itself in our lives today. If we are to heal, one step we must take is to ensure we build ourselves, is to, if we are to heal, one step we must take is to ensure we build our own self-esteem as well as the self-esteem of our children. For many, this will be no easy task. Our esteem has been buffeted by the storms of slavery, oppression, and marketing for so long. For some, building up their esteem may take years, and some families may even take generations for their esteem to stabilize. Rarely have those who have suggested it known how to achieve it, to the frustration of us all. All this being said, please know that it certainly can be done. Mostly it takes perseverance and patience. Two of the great strengths, by the way. Actually, building self-esteem can be a very straightforward exercise. Building esteem can be expedited if we understand its components. If we remember esteem, if blah, 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 blah. If you remember, esteem means worth or value. Self-esteem has to do with our evaluations of our own personal worth or value. To have a good assessment of our worth requires two simple building blocks. First, we must have to, first, we must have to. I want to put that in there so bad. First, we must, there it is again. Well, we must then. First, we have to, in fact, be valuable. And second, we have to be aware of the value we produce. Hence, here is the question that is at the core of our esteem. Are you destroying or are you creating? This is the essence of esteem. Have you discovered your unique gift and shared it with others? Do things get worse or do they improve around you? Are others' lives poorer or richer because you are alive? Do you make the world a better place? When people leave your company, do they feel better than before you arrived? These are some of the signs of value. Did you provide for your children today? Did you do good work at your job? Do you do your best? Do you do the best you can in school? Did you make someone smile? And what's very interesting is that when I first came into, and I think I dated it, because usually I date. Yes, so April 27th, 2019 is when I first latched on to this particular part of the book. When I wrote in the margins and started highlighting. And those questions that allows the better understanding of how to vet and validate one's esteem was hard for me in the beginning because two or three questions were answered no. Now I have to say I'm doing much better where only now there is one and possibly two, all depending on what day it is. But I have gotten much, much better, which ultimately has boosted, has elevated my pro personal esteem. I think I'll be forever grateful for Dr. Joy and this book. Um, in the beginning, it wasn't an easy read. And sometimes, all depending on what section of the book that I tap into, it still isn't an easy read. Um, but let me just, real quick, on page 37, this is one of my more favorite passages because it endorses what I have staked my more catalytic life's work upon. And that is the art of telling one's own story and the powerful emotional investments that are easily transmuted as heirlooms um, when it comes to um, what we inherit from our ancestors. So it says, throughout Africa, storytellers hold an esteemed place in the community. They are the repositories of knowledge. They are the teachers. They pass down their wisdoms through story, the symbolic imagery through stories, the symbolic imagery of their life experience. This oral tradition has been passed along and is evident in African American culture today. Sometimes we neglect to realize how powerful narrative is. And I know I've mentioned it before about the infamous conversation that I had with my dad while we were sitting um, on the front. I want to say maybe about a year or two ago in the summer. Um, and the one thing that he said to me that struck a chord and has been strumming ever since is that our cultural denomination does not own the masters or the rights to our stories, to none of our narratives, and most of the narratives that depict us are not do not originate through us, and that it breaks his heart for the most part of how we do not take up the cause to write in our journals or leave firsthand accounts of what it is that we are going through on a daily basis and share it amongst family, and that the family honor it inside those listening safe spaces where information can be exchanged without judgment, that we literally honor those spaces where someone can sit with us and say, I'm not cool today. I was wrong today. I'm thinking about I'm going to be wrong tomorrow too. I failed tremendously today. I sucked at that. Yes, I blew my top with that. I'm not comfortable when that person's around. So I think our mirror survival, especially the survival that surrounds our emotionality and our intellectual investments, has a lot to do with the journals that we keep. I also say that much of the more progressive cultural denominations have the prize of Uncle Adelaide's journal, Grandpa's journal, like when they were trepping through the Amazon or when they were tapping into the Egyptian sands or whatever it is that they were doing, tomb raiding, whatever they were doing. They had journals and letters. Grandma saved all her letters that Grandpa sent her and professed all his love for her, which reinforced the love that they would have to dwell within their families because someone that they knew unapologetically professed this thing that is such a mystery to us, leaving us with firsthand accounts, invaluable nuances to the bigger narrative that we so desperately seek for in the first place. And that instead of sitting in front of the boob tube, they actually are writing their sentiments because they know great, 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 great grandson, great, great, great nephew, niece is going to inherit this knowledge, this firsthand knowledge, and it is going to direct their paths. It is going to fuel their drives. It's going to navigate their quests for answers, existential answers, answers that the commercials, the public service announcements cannot give you. So the new Jim Crow, page 21. I'm sorry. It's not page 21. I was looking, I was like, hold up, that's not right. I skipped a couple of lines. Okay, 136. This is one of the more harder passages. So I ask that you be a little patient with me while I read through this. It stumbles me, it staggers me every time I read it. Ultimately, these stop and frisk operations amount to much more than humiliation, demeaning rituals for young men of color who must raise their arms and spread their legs, always careful not to make a sudden move or gesture that could provide or that can that could provide an excuse for brutal, even lethal force. Like the days when black men were expected to step off the sidewalk and cast their eyes down when a white woman passed. Young men know the drill when they see the police crossing the street toward them. It is a ritual of dominance and submission played out hundreds of thousands of times each year. But it's more than that. These routine encounters often serve as the gateway into the criminal justice system. The NYPD made 50,300 marijuana arrests in 10,000 in 2010 alone. Most of Mostly of young men of color. As one report noted, these marijuana arrests offer training opportunities for rookie police who can practice on ghetto kids while earning overtime. These arrests serve another purpose as well. They are the most effective way for the NYPD to collect fingerprints, photographs, and other information on young people not yet entered into the criminal databases. A simple arrest for marijuana possession can show up on criminal databases as a drug arrest, quote unquote, a drug arrest without specifying the substance or the charge, and without clarifying even whether the person was convicted. These databases are then used by police and prosecutors as well as employers and housing officials. An electronic record that will haunt many for life. More than 353,000 people were arrested and jailed by the NYPD between 1997 and 2006 for simple possession of small amounts of marijuana, with blacks 5 times more likely to be arrested than whites. The next book, As a Man Thinketh. No, I'm sorry. I'm skipping. I always come out of reading fragments from that book dismal. And I'll say this as well. The book blend is not for any book to be read cover to cover. Um, what I hope to achieve is, for one, you get the hard copy and allow it to take up residency on your bookshelf. And that when you are intuitively led to the book, that you open it up, and wherever space you are drawn to it, that at the time that you are drawn to it, you date it and you highlight that which resonates, and you allow it to un stitch itself from book to book as a silver lining of context, um, which I like to call my navigational view uh, through my self study context. How it tells me more about me, or what it is that I may have to be getting ready to focus on, or tap into, or tune into, or turn on to. So, book number 4, As a Man Thinketh. Why do I keep doing that? I'm sorry, we're not on 4, we're on 3. Becoming by Michelle Obama, page 21. We were starting to feel the effects of this transition, especially at school. My second grade classroom turned out to be a mayhem of unruly kids and flying erasers, which had not been the norm in either my experience or Craig's, which is her brother. All this seemed due to a teacher who couldn't figure out how to assert control, who didn't seem to like children even. Beyond that, it wasn't clear that anyone was particularly bothered by the fact that the teacher was incompetent. The students used it as an excuse to act out, and she seemed to think only the worst of us. In her eyes, we were a class of bad kids, though we had no guidance and no structure and had been sentenced to a grim, underlit room in the basement of the school. Every hour there felt every hour there felt hellish and long. I sat miserably at my desk in a puke green chair, puke green being the official colors of the 1970s, learning nothing and waiting for the midday lunch break when I could go home and have a sandwich and complain to my mom. When I got angry as a kid, I almost always funneled it through my mother. As I fumed about my new teacher, she listened placidly, saying things like, "Oh dear," and "Oh really." She never indulged my outrage, but she took my frustration seriously. If my mother were someone different, she might have done the polite thing and said, "Just go and do your best." But she knew the difference. She knew the difference between whining and actual distress. Without telling me, she went over to the school and began a weeks long process of behind the scenes lobbying, which led me to which led me and a couple of other high performing kids getting quietly pulled out of class, given a battery of tests, and about a week later reinstalled permanently into a bright and orderly third grade class upstairs, governed by a smiling, no nonsense teacher who knew her stuff. It was a small but life changing move. I didn't stop to ask myself then what would happen to all the kids who had been left in the basement with a teacher who couldn't teach. Now that I am an adult, I realize that kids know at a very young age when they're being devalued, when adults aren't interested enough to help them learn. Their anger over it can manifest itself into unruliness. It's it's hardly their fault. They aren't bad kids. They're just trying to survive bad circumstances. At the time, though, I was just happy to have escaped. But I'd learned many years later that my mother, who is by nature weary and quiet, but generally also the most forthright person in any room, made a point of seeking out the second grade teacher and telling her, as kindly as possible, that she had no business teaching and should be working as a drugstore cashier instead. And I will say, since we are right at the brink, at the threshold of Capricorn season, how much I love Michelle Obama for way more elaborate reasons than her just being the first lady, having nothing to do with being Barack Obama's wife. And I, you know, don't throw any shade to him or devalue their power coupling, but just her as a reincarnation of Saturn's goddessness. Just know that I'm going to be reading more passages from this book as it truly delights me to read it, to partake in it. All right, now we get to book number 4. As a man, thank you. Been rushing to get to this. Look at that. So, on the page 17, man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intellectually cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. If you feed it, it will grow. And I have taken up the challenge of mentally cultivating the space between my heart chakra and my crown chakra as a pathway, as a corridor of wilderness that has been cultivated, meaning that I even have imagined wildlife, and within those parameters that runs pretty much parallel of my esophagus up through are also other vegetation, and I have placed the joy of songbird and the rays of the sun, and so it's actually a very creative image to say the least. Um, and it was brought forth by constantly reading that passage over and over and over again, wondering how I could metaphorically bring power to my inner world by that passage alone. It also helps to minimize some of the thought processing and the cosmic footwork that could trample all over my sensitivities if not handled with care. So, because I can feel me running out of steam. So, let's keep it moving. The next book is book number 5, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Page number, where are we? Page 56. And then we're going to move to page 67. So page 56 is the maturing continuum. The 7 habits are not a set of separate or piecemeal psych-up formulas. In harmony with the natural laws of growth, they provide an incremental, sequential, highly integrated approach to the development of personal and interpersonal effectiveness. They move us progressively on the maturity continuum from dependence to independence to interdependence. We each begin life as an infant, totally dependent on others. We are directed, nurtured, and sustained by others. Without this nurturing, we would only have Without this nurturing, we would only live for a few hours or a few days at most. Then gradually, over the, over the ensuing months and years, we become more and more independent, physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially, until eventually we can essentially take care of ourselves, becoming inner directed and self reliant. As we continue to grow and mature, we become increasingly aware that all of nature is interdependent. that there is an ecological system that governs nature, including society. We further discover that the higher reaches of our nature have to do with our relationships with others, that human life is also that human life also is interdependent. Our growth from infancy to adulthood is in accordance with natural law, and that there are many dimensions to growth. Reaching our full physical maturity, for example, does not necessarily assure us of simultaneous emotional or mental maturity. On the other hand, a person's physical dependence does not mean that he or she is mentally or emotionally immature. On the maturity continuum, dependence is the paradigm of you. You take care of me. You come through for me. You didn't come through. I blame you for the results. Independence is the paradigm of I. I can do it. I am responsible. I am self reliant. I can choose. Interdependence is a paradigm of we. We can do it. We can cooperate. We can combine our talents and abilities to create something greater together. And before I go into the next passage, this is a wonderful segue as well as a great honorarium into Capricorn season to bring up the infamous Muhammad Ali's shortest poem that entered into the Guinness Book of World Records, which is Me, We. Yes, it's goat season. It's goat season. All right, on to page 67. How to use this book. Before we begin work on the 7 habits of highly effective people, I would like to suggest 2 paradigm shifts that will greatly increase the value you will receive from this material. First, I will recommend that you do not see this material as a book in the sense that it is something to read once and put it on a shelf. You may choose to read it completely through once for a sense of the whole. But the material is designed to be a companion in the continual process of change and growth. It is organized incrementally and with suggestions for application at the end of each habit, so you can study and focus on any particular habit as you are ready. As you progress to deeper levels of understanding and implementation, you can go back time and again to the principles contained in each habit and work to expand your knowledge, skill, and desire. Second, I would suggest that you shift your paradigm of your own involvement in this material with the role. Mhm, Let me. Second, I would suggest that you shift your paradigm of your own involvement in this material from the role of learner to that of teacher. Take on an inside out approach and read with the purpose in mind of sharing or discussing what you learn with someone else within 48 hours after you learn it. If you had known, for example, that you would be teaching the material on the P/PC balance principle to someone else within 48 hours? Would it have made a difference in your reading experience? Try it now as you read the final section of this chapter. Read as though you are going to teach it to your spouse, your child, a business associate, or a friend today or tomorrow. While it is still fresh, and notice the difference in your material and emotional process. And I like to read that part often because it keeps me mindful of how I proceed and how I absorb certain things as I move along my adventures inside of sifting content and context. Okay, so where are we? We are at book number 6, Grit to Great, page 92. This is one of my most favorite and endured chapters in this book, mainly because it hits so very close to home, and I will give backdrop after I read the passage. So let me sip. I've been talking for nearly 2 hours. Okay. Bend like bamboo. Nature has a funny way of breaking what doesn't bend. Alice Walker. Eleanor Longden was hearing voices. At first, they were simple, neutral narratives describing what she was doing in that moment as a student at the university where she attended, leaving a seminar or opening a door. The voices were so real that she would look around for their source. When she realized the dialogue she experienced was internal, she sought medical attention. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia, a mental disorder that, among other things, makes it hard to distinguish between what is real and what isn't. Doctors prescribed medication for her, as is standard practice, but the voices grew more persistent and menacing, encouraging her to dump water on her teacher, which she did. Ultimately, Longden felt so trapped and became so despairing that she tried to drill a hole in her head to let the voices out. The diagnosis could have been the beginning of a long spiral into institutionalization, life on the street, or even suicide. But there were two people instrumental in Longden's life who elevated her situation above the ordinary. First, there was her mother, who believed that somehow Longden would make it through and repeatedly told her so. And second, her doctor, who helped her understand that the voices only reflected metaphoric examples of her own fears. When a voice would tell Longden not to leave the house, she came to learn how to deconstruct the meaning behind that voice, seeing that it was really saying seeing that what it was really saying was that she was afraid. And once she understood better what was happening in her mind, she was able to confront her fears, and the voices backed off. Longden practiced this mental exercise for years, slowly regaining her ability not only to function, but to thrive. And I'll start by saying, no, I have not been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Because most often when I say it's one of my more favorite um, chapters, folks, because I do have such an outlandish demeanor, figure that, they are just waiting for the shoe to drop where it's like, where I am without a shadow of a doubt diagnosed with, yeah. So here's the deal, and this is my take. And I will never, ever, ever prompt or prop myself up to be any type of psychological professional or guru or insightful beyond my means. But in in my humble defense, I have studied quite a bit of things around this thing called psychological archaeology. I have dug deep into the mannerisms, characteristics, and behavioral tendencies of, of the human existence. Quite intrigued. I was into this thing before I knew that it was a thing, mainly around zodiacal chemistry and compatibility, um, but still all the same. And oh, well, unofficially have taken quite a bit of university level courses within the pursuit of a psychology degree. But yeah. And so this is Will to get choppy. And I know I have drawn this lecture out for, yeah, and so it's long winded and it's rambly. And so, yes, please forgive me, but here we go. When there are voices in the head, we have been socially conditioned to believe that it is something that should not be there, that we should be bothered by it, spooked by it, that we should be pumping ourselves with all sorts of chemical synthetics to quiet these voices without tapping into, turning on to, tuning into the celestial source on the other side, on the side of the non-visible, on the side of the invisible, and that we sever the communication, pretty much hang up on the celestial that may be trying to um, communicate through us, let alone to us. And so, yeah, some of the voices that come through are menacing and that type and that sort of nature. And I can't honestly say what one is to do one way or the other. But I will say that I identify, especially when I was in my valley, in my shadow of death, in my more night of the living soul cycles. And because of trendy traditions, I sought out the help of many psychiatrists and had dipped in and out of various cocktails of antidepressants and sleeping aids and things to suppress my anxiety, and but it wasn't necessarily to quiet voices. It was more so to regulate the emotions that were being triggered by what I just figured were locomotives of thought. Realizing that taking these synthetics, not only did it not really truly do much for me, but it seemed to have been fucking up a whole bunch of other things. And so my motor skills were off. I was jumpy. I seemed to be more frightened on that shit than off of it. So I took up the cause to take myself off and cold turkey it. In hindsight, me acknowledging the fact that these inner voiced communications was a link into realms unseen, I began to approach them and engage them differently. And in turn, the quote unquote harshness of it all subsided. And when I began to learn more that I actually had the power to tap in and literally have a inquiry, a question and answer, a even witty comical dialogue, then I really began to hone into it. And now, as a seeker, like truly owning that quality of identification, all mysteries are not unfolding, but I've still tapped into it enough where I am convinced that I have allegiance in the unknown. And that has been monumental. Just as I mentioned at the beginning of the segment, that inside of my current goddess studies, I am now getting a new profound definition to bipolar and how it is uh, intimately uh, intertwined in my lunar cycles. And so I'm not even reflecting upon this thing called PMS the same anymore. Everything is different as I have now taken up the challenge and the causality to cultivate my inner world and how I interpret and view things from a first-hand basis. So I'm going to end with the last book, book number 7, Becoming the Obvious Choice. We are going to tap into page 9, which piggybacks and reinforces what we read in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the best ways to improve speaking skills is to teach others what you know. The more you help others grow, the more you will grow. You get to hear it one more time and you become more accountable to yourself and to others. So, how do you get started? You just have to be willing to take the time and take advantage of the available opportunities. And so spending this time with you was an available opportunity for me to share what I am discovering. I hope that this has been enlightening. I really do hope that you will take inventory to your bookshelves and you will find yourself within all that I have shared. If not completely, at least a little bit. Remember, we're inside the maturity continuum. And so it's one dot spilling into the next dot, spilling into the next dot until we have an entire sun moon dance going on. And eclipse won't seem so scary. So I will close out with yet another invitation for you to go and visit the blog on behalf of the story.blogspot.com. And until next time, I wish you well.